willingly and generously cooperated in that work, allowing the sword of pain to pierce your soul until the supreme hour of the cross, when you kept watch on Calvary, standing beside your Son, who died that we might live. From that moment you became, in a new way, the mother of all those who receive your Son Jesus in faith and choose to follow in his footsteps by taking up his cross. Mother of hope, in the darkness of Holy Saturday you journeyed with unfailing trust towards the dawn of Easter. Grant that your children may discern at all times, even those that are darkest, the signs of God's loving presence. That's our Holy Father 1 week ago. Co-redemption is on his mind and in his heart. Within this context, I want to answer 3 objections which have been posed to the co-redemptrix by way of summary. The first objection is that the term co-redemptrix represents a pre-Vatican II Mariology and therefore is irrelevant. As we have said, as soon as John Paul II used the term, it ceased to be anything of a preconciliar term because the Vicar of Christ after the Council uses it. But more importantly, this represents an artificial separation between doctrine and title. The title encapsulates, embodies the doctrine, which continues to be the teachings, the powerful teachings of the Second Vatican Council and of John Paul II on repeated times, and now Pope Benedict. Second objection is that you can call Mary Mother of the Redeemer, but you cannot call her co-redemptrix. This, my friends, is a false dichotomy, in the sense that she is not either or, but she is both. Of course, she's the Mother of Redeemer, but as the Fathers, and of course starting with John 19, and the Scholastics, and the Papal Magisterium, all say, after she says yes to be the mother of Jesus, she continues to suffer with Jesus in the fulfillment of Simeon and the prophecy that her heart would be pierced at Calvary. So she is Mother of the Redeemer, but she's also co-redemptrix after the Annunciation. So that would not be a valid objection. The third objection, which is the most common, is that co-redemptrix is anti-ecumenical. And we've heard the beautiful testimony of Dr. Gentle, the outstanding explanations of Father Fellner and Monsignor Calkins on this. But I also want to add that in the document Ut Unum Sint by John Paul II, he defines the term. Sometimes the term ecumenism is a little bit like the term love in the 1970s. We all use it, but we don't know exactly what it means, and no one dares define it. Ecumenism has a very specific meaning, and John Paul II gives us that meaning. He says ecumenism is to have prayer as the soul and dialogue as the body, which seeks Christian unity ultimately in the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. And he warns in Ut Unum Sint that for ecumenical reasons, you may never, number one, compromise doctrine, and number two, prevent the development of doctrine. And therefore, it is always an error of theology to say any development or articulation of Marian co-redemption is anti-ecumenical. I'll give you 2 cases of somewhat recent cardinals. The late Cardinal O'Connor of New York, when he sent his letter to John Paul II for the dogma, he said, the dogma will help, the proclamation of the Fifth Marian dogma will help ecumenism because it will be the Vicar of Christ on the highest level of authority saying what Mary is and what Mary is not. It will take away any objection that Catholics place Mary on a level of equality with Jesus Christ. Because here you will have a solemn definition by the Pope of saying, we do not, and we would never. And that's authentic ecumenical dialogue. More recently, both Cardinal Topol, who is the previous primate of the Indian Bishops' Conference, and the present primate, Cardinal Vithayathil, have published interviews on Zenit saying the dogma will help interreligious dialogue. It will help it. That means Muslims, Hindus, and Christians. And for those who doubt this, it's happening right now in places like India, where in the major Marian shrines, Hindus and Muslims and Christians are praying together because they recognize that the mother is a mother of unity. So this takes us away from theory, and it gives us concrete examples of how this proclamation will be a unifying factor for the church today. So these are not legitimate objections to the definition. More positively, what will a proclamation of the dogma give us? The first thing it will give us is a theological clarity on the highest level. For example, with our present Holy Father, you have a world-class theologian. You have a theologian who is respected by everyone in terms of his competency. And that also guarantees that you would have the most scriptural, the most theologically sound articulation of what is already part of our tradition. And so how can the truth hurt us inside the church or hurt those on the outside? Because it's already a truth. But now you would have what Blessed Pius IX called in 1854, you would have a perfection of the doctrine. The most clear articulation possible. That would be a service. Secondly, the dogma would be a theological correction of the idea that man does not cooperate with grace. That the human person doesn't have to assist in the work of redemption. And yet, my friends, this is a cornerstone of Catholic theology. We must cooperate. The plain analogy is, if you talk about a plant you had 20 years ago, and someone says, well, how long ago did you get the plant? Well, 20 years ago. When did you water the plant? 20 years ago. Then you have a pretty good idea of whether the plant is alive or dead today. It's the same thing with faith. When did you take Jesus as my personal Savior? 20 years ago. Have you cooperated since then? No. You have the conclusion. We have to cooperate with grace. And actually, my friends, it's the greatest dignity that God the Father gives us. That we, by using our gift of freedom, can participate in our redemption and also the redemption of other people. It's what St. Thomas Aquinas calls the envy of the angels. The angels envy us in only one way. They cannot suffer in body to lead other souls into heaven. But we as humans can do that. So this is the concept of what the dogma would say. Since Mary is the archetype of human cooperation for redemption, it would be an intrinsic, organic correction of any idea that we are predestined in a sense of not using freedom. Thirdly, it would be an intrinsic clarification and reaffirmation of the dignity of woman. God so loved the world that he gave his only Son. God so loved the world and so loved woman that he wanted woman involved in salvation. Not a priest, not a bishop, not a pope. This, my friends, is authentic Christian feminism. This is where a woman discovers her mystery. And it's where a woman has a proper sense of veneration, that God has such a deep respect for woman. So must man, so does the church, so does Our Lady become the archive and the embodiment of this dignity. Ultimately, this proclamation of the dogma will release Our Lady for the power of full intercession.